Leading off our broadcast 2 days from now, the latest class for the Baseball Hall of Fame going to be announced, and there is growing optimism. The greatest hitting catcher in the history of the game, Mike Piazza, is going to be on that list. Piazza getting just under 70% of the vote a season ago, expected to get the necessary 75% this time around. For Mike, this is his fourth year of eligibility. So Piazza's career resume brought to you by Geico. 427 home runs, first amongst catchers. He's also tops in go-ahead RBIs, game-winning RBIs and slugging percentage, and he's fourth all-time amongst catchers with 1,335 RBIs. And we welcome you. It's Mets Hot Stove, presented by Geico. Gary Apple sitting alongside Jim Duquette and Dave Leonard of Newsday. Happy New Year to both of you guys. And let's begin here with Mike Piazza. The numbers certainly paint a very positive picture when it comes to Mike and the Hall of Fame. So, David, I'll begin with you on this. Does he deserve to get in this time round?
I mean, deserve isn't the question here. I mean, it's obvious. Why isn't he in is more of the question. You know, from a numbers perspective, you know, Piazza has the whole resume. I mean, he's a 12-time All-Star. You know, multiple silver sluggers. We've already talked about the 400-plus home runs. He has all the statistics, especially for a catcher, so that's no doubt. I mean, I'm very surprised it's taken him this long. He's now in his fourth year. I thought he should have been a first-ballot Hall of Famer. I was stunned when he wasn't. So the only reason why he hasn't been here has been some of the other whispers, certainly not from a numbers standpoint.
We know about the whispers, talk about performance-enhancing drugs. So that has certainly been out there. But, Jim, what are the chances when they announce the class on Wednesday he's going to get the call?
Well, you see that he almost had 70% last year. Normally, those guys in between 65 and 75 that don't get in, they end up getting in. I think this is a chance this year. I would be surprised if he doesn't get in. If you look at the current numbers, and there's a guy online at not Mr. Tibbs who follows the public balloting.
Right.
And the public balloting right now, there's almost 35% in. Piazza's at 86.5%. So and you look at it from that perspective, and really over the history of it, that they've been keeping track of this, when they start to tally the non-public ballots that are already submitted, there's been about a 5% or so dropout. So if that still stays true, which is what's happened in the last couple of years, he's going to be around that 80-81%, you would think. And so it seems like he's in a comfortable zone. But as you know, Dave, you never know really in this type of situation if it's really going to stand true or not.
I think one important thing to note here, Jim, is that last year they had 549 total ballots that were cast in 2015. We're going to be down to about 450 this year. And last year, Piazza had 384 votes already. Just for the 75% this year, he needs 338. So the numbers are all pointed to Piazza. So it would really be very surprising if he didn't get in when the announcement is made on Wednesday.
Certainly positivity on the Piazza front. One guy who is basically a lock to get in this year is Ken Griffey Jr. The question is, when it comes to him, could he become the first unanimous selection? And then there are guys like Jeff Bagwell and Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, all of whom fall under the cloud of PED suspicion. And so I turn to you on this, David. How do you make the determination of where the line is drawn when it comes to alleged PED guys?
Yeah, it's a very tricky line to walk here. And, Major League Baseball and the officials at Cooperstown really haven't made it easy on us, the writers, the members of the BBWA. I mean, there are no guidelines here. They've made these players eligible. Unlike Pete Rose, who was made ineligible because of his gambling situation, these guys are all eligible to be voted in. So where do we make the distinction? Well, in my case, I've always voted for Bonds and Clemens. They just kind of stood above everyone else. I know they had their own courtroom drama with that, but in that case, I just think on their own they were deserving to get in. Now, aside from that, I have guys that haven't had the suspicion with them, and you want to talk about Piazza, that's one thing. But the rest of the guys for this, I used all 10 spots on my ballot, and some of the other guys, Trevor Hoffman, Edgar Martinez, Mike Mussina, Tim Raines and Kurt Schilling, those guys you haven't seen linked to that sort of thing.
And the problem with it, let's say in Mike's case, in Piazza's case in particular, it's been speculation without the proof with this. And I think the same thing falls for Bagwell. And that's the thing that bothers me is, okay, at some point, he's been retired 5 years. This is the fourth year he's on the ballot. How long do you have to really wait before you've realized there's nothing that's going to come out on this? And so now it becomes, well, how do you know for sure? We have no evidence to suggest it. So let's go go, boys. Let's get him, get him in. I think, you've been one of the few that have been voting for this. I've always felt in this era, if they were Hall of Famers, we didn't test for it. There was no penalty for it at the time. So why don't we judge them in that era, whether they were Hall of Fame worthy or not?
Right.
To me, and then, if you want to put an asterisk around it, that's something for the Hall to decide. But you're right, the Hall has kind of left you guys out to dry when it comes to voting.
I was saying a moment ago, this is the fourth year that Piazza has been eligible, and there is this groundswell for him this time around. You mentioned the numbers when you've gotten at least 69, 70% of the vote. Next year, pretty good chance you're going to get in. All but one has done so. So when you look at Piazza and you think about the numbers that he's put up, if he doesn't get in this year, if things change and he doesn't get the support, doesn't get the vote that he needs to get in, will it slide backwards for him?
I would tend to think not. I think in Piazza's case, again, like I mentioned with the numbers, these players tend to keep moving upward. I mean, once you reach a certain threshold, whether it's 50 and start trending upward, you get to 60. Once you start moving through 70, you start gaining votes mostly in that situation. The only people we're not going to see do that are maybe the Bonds and Clemens types. One interesting thing to note here that I found was that there are guys changing their minds on Bonds and Clemens now, which I didn't think was going to happen. I thought when they first became on the ballot, they were going to stay hard and fast on that. These guys are cheaters in their minds, and that would be it. But now people are starting to soften that stance, so I'm curious to see where it's going to go.
Who else do you think is going to get in, Jim, on Wednesday?
Well, Griffey for sure is in, and whether he's going to be 100% or not, I would, it's one of those guys where he has a chance to set the record. Whether he's 100% or not, I don't know. I don't think so. We haven't had one yet, so I'm going to say probably not. But Seaver was, I think, 98.64 somewhere. He has the highest percentage. I think he's going to push that. After that, it's still up in the air. If you look at Bagwell of the public ballots, he's down now to 79.5%. He's sliding. He was up at 85 not too long ago. Raines was over 84% or so. He slid down to 78%. Again, 75% to get in. So it's looking kind of perilous right now for those two. It looked like a couple of days ago you could sit there and say maybe 4, and now it's looking like maybe 2.
I think we're looking at it's going to be Griffey and Piazza on Wednesday. You mentioned, Jim, these numbers are sliding. They will continue to slide. Usually the public ballots come out first. There's a lot of support for players in that sense. The ballots that haven't been published or haven't been made public on Twitter or other social media, they tend to vote less. So you do see maybe a 5 to 7% switch. I expect Griffey and Piazza on Wednesday.